Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter. Episode 29, recorded on June 26th, 2019. The Cloud Pod reinforces security. Hey guys, welcome from Boston in my lovely Airbnb apartment. How are you guys doing?
Doing well in my hotel. I think your Airbnb is a lot nicer than my hotel.
Yeah, it might be debatable. It's good enough. And then how about you, Jonathan? How's it going out in lovely California?
Well, I'm happy to be watching from a distance.
Indeed you are. But we do have a special guest who's joining us today, Sarah Tumbarella from Foghorn. She's a security engineer on their team. You want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Sure. As Justin said, my name is Sarah Tumbarella. I have been doing security now for about 7 years. I have a diverse background. I also have a master's degree in information systems security as well as my CISP.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you on the podcast. I've known you for quite a while, and you've been a friend of the show as well from the distance, so we're happy to have you here. And you're the perfect person on this day where we talk all about Reinforce and security with Amazon.
Excellent. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's cover the elephant in the room first of all, which is the draft results. So it was a rough draft for both Jonathan and I. But Peter did come out on flying colors with the Flowlogs with Payload data packet capture, as they did finally announce the bump in the wire capability, which gets him 1 solid point, which to Jonathan and I's 0 points. That's a solid win with no debate. So we didn't need our tiebreaker in chief, Ryan Lucas, to join us for this one. Jonathan did get an honorable mention though on organization enhancements to make security easier across. So he gets a bonus kudo, but no points for that. And then Peter also did predict the lunch would be free as and you bought it with your admission to the conference. But so overall the draft was a little bit of a bust this time around. I wonder how much of that is just a lack of understanding of what Amazon really is trying to do from a privative perspective versus what we really want them to do. And is that a disconnect, or is that really more of just Amazon isn't as far ahead on some of these areas as we hope they would be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole new world, and we know exactly where our pain points are, and they got to prioritize something. So I'm sure if we kept this contest going long enough, a few of these other things are going to pop up in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. I think they'll get filled in, and maybe just not at this particular conference.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I'd probably be open up some feature requests for at least some of the things that we predicted, which didn't come true. The way Azure improved their security groups to use services as sources or destinations is something that Amazon should definitely do. So that's going to go on my list.
Well, all right. Well, let's just talk about the conference overall. So it is here in lovely Boston. The weather's been relatively good. Pretty nice and warm, but not too hot. A little bit humid. We did have some rain yesterday after the main day of activities, but overall it's been pretty pleasant. The venue is nice. It's a very large airport hangar type venue. Has a really nice show floor with lots of security vendors in it, and of course a very large breakout room for the keynote. Steve Schmidt did the keynote yesterday. He is the CISO for AWS. I've seen him talk a couple of times in the past at previous shows at reInvent. He does the state of security talk, and I've seen that a couple of times and heard him speak. And overall, it was very much the same story he's been kind of selling for the last couple of years on the main stage at reInvent. And so there wasn't a lot there in his overall keynote session that I thought was really interesting. There were a few announcements scattered around, which we'll get to in a little bit. But overall, the way I compared to somebody, I said, well, if you've ever been to a summit and you've seen one of the summit keynotes, it was just a more security bent version of a summit keynote from my perspective. But yeah, that's kind of my initial take. What about you, Peter?
Yeah, I think I was surprised because we're doing a security focused event, which I thought they would end up going a little bit deeper. I thought that the information was pretty introductory, which is often the case when you're doing a regional event because you're really trying to get the word out and get awareness. But I thought the format was good. I thought he did a great job. I just thought the content was a little introductory, and this could just be coming from someone who's been going to these things since 2012.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think it was pretty high level. I would have definitely have liked to see them get down to a more granular level and get into some details.
Yeah, I think they did a disservice themselves because they kind of kept everything a bit higher level than I think they meant to. And so I think the keynote was talking about a lot of basics and a lot of things we already knew. Several of the sessions that I attended, the breakout sessions, even 300 and 400 level tracks were very, this is a VPC, this is the shared security model. And fundamentally, I've been doing this a long time as well. I don't really need that. I'm more interested in the higher level value props of some of the security solutions, how to put the primitives together into something interesting. I really wanted more kind of into the, how does Amazon, he talked about on stage, like, they have one on-call SOC person for all of security at AWS at any given time. There's one person who's on call who's just monitoring the automation. I wish they would unpack that more. I wish they would talk about what they are doing there, how they use Amazon solutions to deliver that value, what other things are they doing that are interesting. I think that'd be really compelling. And that would have been what I was kind of hoping to get out of this, was more of a prescriptive way to do security on AWS, less this is the basic building blocks that you can use to do something.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it. A more prescriptive approach of how to do it.
Yeah, because I think we've covered the primitives in depth at reInvent several years in a row. I wanted more. I wanted more prescription. I wanted more like, this is how you do it. This is what you need to do. I mean, and there was an interesting session we went to about using mathematical proofs to prove compliance, which is now being baked into their inspector product and a couple other things. And that's interesting, but again, it was still very high level, not a lot of depth. But yeah, I hope overall to get some really good feedback from this conference. I think it could be really powerful, but I think it needs to be thought of a little bit differently. I think this needs to be a much more technical conference that's more deep dive, hands-on lab stuff versus the high level, these are the primitives and here's how we use them.
I agree 100%. It would have been really nice to have sat in sessions where they just did a really deep dive into technical and how we can utilize that for our clients, right? And help them build out these different tools, especially for compliance. That mathematical equation was pretty cool to watch. But overall, I mean, that was about the only technical session that I sat through. And you're right, it was very high level. They didn't really give you any meat to go back and implement.
Yeah, there's definitely some sessions that I wanted to get into that I couldn't. Of course, you have the typical conference sessions full, try and get in standby line. I know Colm did an interesting talk on encryption that I'll check out on YouTube here in a couple days when it's out. So I think there might be some good nuggets here in the mix, but you're gonna have to dig for them a little bit, I think, overall. I think the big problem I have with this conference too is for 2 days, paying $1,300 if you didn't have a discount code versus going to reInvent, which is around $1,500 to $1,600, I think. And you get 4 or 5 days of content out of that. I think the value is not quite here. And so this is definitely a problem I have to solve because I don't think they sold out the event. I think people looked at the price tag and said the exact same thing I just said, which was 2 days for that price. I don't think it's worth it. And then the other thing, takeaway that I had was, I was at the Palo Alto Ignite conference a few weeks ago, and the audience is different, right? That was true security people, security engineers, CISOs, people who are really living and breathing security in a big way with Palo Alto. And I think why we had a lot of, there are definitely security people here at the conference. They feel more like DevSecOps guys and really focusing more on DevSecOps and automation and stuff like that, but they're not the hardcore security people who understand IOCs, who understand, how different systems work and how the different threat models are. And so I think they didn't quite get the audience they needed either. And I think if they had gotten that audience, it actually would probably be a worse result than what they're going to get in the surveys now, because I think those people would be even more disappointed in the content that we saw.
Did you get any swag for your money or just the sessions?
I did get some swag. I got some good stuff. I have a lovely Armor beer cozy for my beer.
Ooh.
All right. Any other overall thoughts, Sarah or Peter?
Well, one thing that was kind of nice about the fact that it wasn't sold out was it felt like how it should be as far as how crowded it was on the floor, how easy it was like ahead of time to book seats at events. I mean, versus reInvent where 1 hour into opening that up, everything is booked and everything is packed everywhere you go. It was kind of nice having a little space, and it felt like that's how the conference, these things should feel as far as how crowded they are, how easy it is to get into sessions.
In Steve's defense, do you think the role of the CISO is as technical as you were expecting, or is it more of a management function? I mean, would you expect a CISO to do a very technical presentation on stage?
I wouldn't, honestly. And I mean, in my opinion, no, I don't think so. But I think they could have done, they kept it really, really high level. It would have been nice to have gotten a different perspective. I mean, I don't feel that I sat there and, learned, or took in some new knowledge. Everything was pretty high level. It I would imagine that most everybody already knew. He still did a great job, though. I mean, the conference was great all around, and had, like Peter said, it wasn't, super congested, and they did a great job. But it's year one, right? So just do your evaluations on the sessions, and hopefully they'll take that and run with it next year.
Yeah, that's my hope as well, is that we see a big improvement in this session next year. It will be in Houston next year versus Boston, so they are moving the venue to Central Time Zone. So we'll see how that works out in Houston, and if they have the same pricing or if it's the same, different level of content, number of days. They didn't say the exact dates; they just said it will be in 2020 in Houston. So we'll see when they'll be scheduling that, because July in Houston is pretty humid, so that might not be the most fun time to go. But we will definitely find out. All right, well, let's get into the announcements, because I think there was at least some good announcements in all of this, and some good innovations that people can take advantage of. Even though it wasn't things that we guessed or things that we really wanted, I think there are still some good stuff here. So let's just jump into these. So the first one actually came out a little bit late last week, and I tried to sort of clump all of the security related things which were very clearly tied to this conference that either weren't good enough to make the main stage or weren't interesting enough that they potentially released them a couple days early or during the event during the day. And so I'm a little bit going to a little bit last week, so I apologize for that. But first one is the Amazon Certificate Manager Private CA now supports a root CA hierarchy. So this allows you to create fully private CA authorities on top of AWS. The pricing is about $400 per region where you want a private CA service, and about 75 cents per certificate for the first 1,000 certificates. And you use these private certificates, of course, to generate internal certificates between your load balancers and your hosts. So this is a really nice feature. I actually was I was very vocal with Amazon about how I didn't want to actually manage root certificates. And the fact that they, in the previous iteration of private CA, they had basically made it so you had to have on-premise infrastructure or EC2-based infrastructure to hold these private root certs. And I thought that was a bad call. And so I was glad to hear it. That was at reInvent, and now 6 months later, they've released what I really wanted the first time, which is really great. So nice to see this come out. It is still a little bit pricey, but I think it's still in the right direction.
Yeah, and if you look at actually doing it yourself, I'm sure this pricing isn't really that bad.
But it's good to see the prices come down a little bit. It's still kind of pricey, really, 75 cents per certificate, but at least it's not a monthly charge like KMS.
The next announcement was you can now use IAM Access Advisor with your Amazon organization to set permission guardrails more confidently. And so this is a feature that's existed for a while for single accounts, where you could basically see which services have been accessed by a certain IAM access role, and when the last time that was done. Now you can do this organizational-wide to help you develop your SCPs or your service control policies, and set these permission guardrails at the organizational level and have them cascade down across the environment. So that's a really nice enhancement for those who are worried about least privilege and are using Amazon organizations. There was quite a few organizations enhancements throughout the conference that I think is a really great move by AWS, and this is a great first step.
Yeah, I mean, they're just getting closer and closer to the Google GCP model, where IAM is global and your blast radius are projects. So now that we're considering, we consider accounts to be blast radius, this is our roll up, and getting more features at the orgs level is going to be a requirement.
Definitely agree with Peter and with what you said, Justin. I think that this is a great step forward, and it really starts to give more visibility and really starts to let us get more granular with those permissions as well.
I mean, what's really new here? I mean, SCPs have been around for a little while. Is it just the visibility into the last used information for each service in the region? Is it just so you can double check to make sure that your policy does what you think it does?
Yeah, I think it's that roll-up viewpoint. That's the new feature, right? So the SCPs have existed for a while, but if you set something too granular because one of your accounts was using some service you didn't know about, you could actually cause downtime or issues for that service team. So this gives you much more confidence that the guardrails you're setting when you run them through the Access Advisor will not impact services that actually need those capabilities. So it's really the point of it. But I think it's definitely an improvement over what was there before, which was that you had to go to every one of your 200 some odd accounts and address it.
I don't know about you, but if I'm browsing the web and follow a link, if it doesn't load in a few seconds, I'll click away and go elsewhere. Performance of each site directly affects whether it gets my attention and, more importantly, my business. Your business runs on applications, and whether it's signing up, searching, or selfies, it better work. A modern application today is built from multiple components or services, and each one of these services has a stack that will make or break the performance of your application. That's your customer's experience and their impression of you. So how do you manage it? You don't. You let software do it for you. Turbonomic automatically manages application resources for you. Their software identifies and executes the right resource decisions at the right time at every layer of the stack, ensuring your applications get the compute, storage, and network they need when they need it. Turbonomic is trusted by more than 2,000 digitally transforming customers and runs over 100 of the Fortune 500's hybrid and multi-cloud environments, continuously assuring the performance of their complex and dynamic applications. Check out Turbonomic today at turbonomic.com/cloudpod. Again, that is turbonomic.com/cloudpod. Links in the show notes.
The next announcement was the network load balancer now supports UDP protocol, which is a key requirement for one of the other services we'll talk about later. But basically now being able to support UDP protocol, in addition to TCP, allows you to load balance things like authentication authorization solutions, logging, DNS, IoT, and packet flow, which is really important. And overall, this is a nice service. It does not support anything but target types currently. IP target types and private link are not supported by the UDP protocol on NLB, but overall, if you're using two EC2 instances, this service will work just fine for you. The feature is supported in CloudFormation day one, which is great. And overall, this is a nice improvement.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's actually been supported in CloudFormation since before UDP was actually a feature on the NLB. I think the documentation for CloudFormation listed UDP as an option, but it was just never supported by the load balancer itself. So it's a first, everybody. CloudFormation supported it before the feature actually existed.
Perfect.
This is great, though. This is great. I think this has been on my most wanted list for a little while.
What services do you want? Or do you have services you've been waiting to?
Media streaming is a big use case, but the one for me is really DNS.
Yeah, I've had a ton of customers who are always looking to leverage like file transfer. Tsunami, I think, open source, and then there's stuff built off it like Aspera and other UDP, just fast file upload tools. So I can imagine this making it a little easier for us to build our own.
Yeah, and one other thing that I would like to add to, especially from a security perspective, when you're looking at tools like Radius, for user authentication, it often uses UDP as well. So
that's a good point. Yep.
Amazon FSX had several feature announcements as well. So Windows File Server version of FSX now has 2 announcements. It enables you to use your file systems directly with your organization's self-managed Active Directories. This is if you're running an AD on EC2 or on-premise, you can now connect FSX to that for authentication and authorization of your shares and your data sharing model. As well as now they allow you to use the Amazon Managed AD for file server from a single VPC or across multiple account barriers. So you actually get the benefit of, if you're using Amazon's Managed AD, you can now share that across multiple accounts and leverage that for part of your Windows file server capabilities of FSX, which is super nice. So both these announcements in the FSX space are nice for the teams who are doing Windows and large-scale Windows adoption in cloud, especially with the multi-account strategy, and this is really welcome. In the case of the AD across VPCs and accounts, this is across, of course, peering or transit gateways, and then the cross-account capabilities via the directory sharing feature, which is relatively new as well. So these are both nice features.
Couldn't imagine using Windows file servers without it.
Yeah, well, it was a bit difficult when you couldn't use it across accounts, because how do you then basically had to create an FSX in a central account, and then you had to basically share that across through peering or some other relationship. But you really want that FSX to run potentially in that account, so it's not that in a central control plane. So yeah, definitely nice to do.
Yeah.
Both of these features come with no additional cost, which is always a win in the Amazon world. Because if they charge us for AD lookup, that would be pretty expensive.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd hope there'd be no additional cost for something. This is just a configuration item like that.
Yeah. The other storage-related area around the file gateway, which is the on-premise virtual appliance you can run to do virtual tape libraries or just have a NAS capable to your network users, now supports the ability to enforce encryption and signing for SMB shares. This allows you to set up those security levels at the file gateway, and then have that cross from both the on-premise side all the way up to S3, where that data will be stored using the same signing and encryption capabilities. So that's a pretty nice feature too.
Yeah, anytime you can enforce encryption, it's a great thing to have.
Yeah, well, as Werner says, encrypt everything, and so the more
Yep.
services you have to encrypt, I think in the keynote, Steve actually mentioned they have 117 services now that support encryption out of the box, which is really great, and they said it was 40 times more than any other cloud provider and would support encryption out of the box. So they're definitely leading the pack when it comes to this level of encryption and security.
The
Yeah.
question is going to be when do they start turning off unencryption? When are they going to start disallowing unencrypted data? Period. Like just that feature goes away.
There are use cases where potentially you don't want to encrypt data because there's a CPU cost to it, like thinking about logging directories or places where you're just writing a raw log out of HTTP or Apache servers. You don't necessarily want to have that data encrypted because of the CPU overhead. So they may not ever completely eliminate it, but they may make it default encrypted, and then you have to basically specify you don't want it encrypted for a specific reason. That way it's an exception instead of the norm.
Yeah.
I think right now it's all about you have to enable the encryption if you want it, but it's available to you. Well, the next feature I'm super excited about. This is the new service quotas capability, and this is at the organizational level. So you can now view and manage your quotas for AWS services from one central location. Now, when they announced this, I didn't know what a service quota was, but apparently this is also what they refer to as limits. And so these are your service limits around things like how many EC2 instances you can run of a certain type, EBS volume attachments, public IP addresses, etc. So you can now set these at the organizational level. You can review them across all of your accounts, and if you see one that is going to be reaching its level, you can basically click on it and open up a support case right there to make that quota increase happen pretty seamlessly. So that's overall a really nice improvement. I'm a little confused on how some of the IAM permissions work for how to open that support case. I don't know if that's just in the back end that Amazon's handling that for you, if you have to give it special permissions to do so. But as this rolls out, I will be taking a quick deep dive on it because I think it's a really great feature. It'd also be nice if it did some more automation around like, hey, I want new accounts to have increased service limits as well at an organizational level, but I don't think it's quite doing that yet, but definitely things we can hope for in the future.
I think this has been needed for a long time. It's been so frustrating trying to manage service limits, especially across multiple accounts. Even some of the limits just seem to be set unusually low and always require to be adjusted for every single account we deploy. And by the time we've got a couple of hundred accounts, it's a bit of a chore. So it's great that we have the visibility. I'm a bit disappointed that it's really just automated with people on the back end, kind of Mechanical Turk style. It just opens up a support ticket when I think in the case of the enterprises where the service limits will automatically be increased. I mean, why even have a person look at them in that case? Why open a ticket? Why have to wait for half an hour or an hour or however long the SLA is for those tickets to make that service change? It complicates deployments when you have to worry about service limits. So I think they have room for improvement here, but it's a great first step.
It's funny though, right? Because one of the main reasons that these soft limits exist are to protect you a little bit from like unintentional runaway automation. So if you take away all of the human or the delay out of it, then you effectively don't have limits on the accounts, other than maybe Amazon's like budgetary limits. They don't want to give you a certain amount of rope because you haven't passed a certain credit check. But I like them because you can protect yourself from accidentally spinning up 1,000 or 10,000 instances because you wrote your code wrong or you set your auto-scaling groups wrong.
Yeah, I guess so. But if you're trying to automate account creation, it's a little frustrating then to have to open up some support cases and then poll to see if the support cases are being closed yet, even if they're executed properly. So I think the runaway risk or somebody's got my keys and they're running Bitcoin miners in all my regions. I think that's a risk I'd be prepared to take if I could opt into a more automated system.
I definitely agree. I think you nailed it with the sort of new account defaults for the org. That would be a brilliant, easy new feature, it seems like, so that you can quickly get all the correct settings for your accounts as you create them.
Yeah, because I mean, every time you do a service limit increase, the justification is it can be a bit of a chore. I mean, if you want more than 1,000 lambdas or 3,000 concurrent lambdas, whatever the default is, having to explain to the next support tech every single time that this is your business, you're trying to run everything serverlessly, and of course you need more than 1,000 concurrent executions. It's I don't know, it seems like a waste of time.
Yeah, it's funny that you mention the Bitcoin mining, because we've all been in a situation where we've accidentally put our keys out there and, a ton of servers get spun up, and before you know it, you've got a bill from Amazon that's, $25,000. So I think from that perspective, I think that's great, but I can understand your frustrations as well.
Yeah, but that is one of the leading causes for a lot of our customers of unexpected outages when they thought they architected for high availability is when they creep up on a service limit. So it's I think you definitely have to have visibility across the board on them.
I think there's definitely room for improvement on the service overall, that they can continue to work towards making this better. But overall, I'm super happy about it.
Me too.
Amazon DynamoDB is now supporting up to 25 unique items and 4 megabytes of data per transactional request. And so this came out on Monday, which we're including here for the show. But it's not really security related, but we'll talk about it here real quick. The transactions, of course, enable developers to simplify their code and support workflows and business logic that requires adding, updating, or deleting multiple items as a single transaction. So this is overall a nice improvement if you're using transactional requests with DynamoDB. I don't have a lot to say about it, so we'll probably move on for this one pretty quickly, but just want to mention it as it came out on Monday morning.
Yeah, I mean, let's just use schemaless databases, very much more like a relational database.
Yeah, it's funny how we went NoSQL, and then our big push is to go back to SQL with these kind of constructs that just get you back to the old way.
It's convenient. We want the features, but the NoSQL was invented because people like Facebook got to the point where they couldn't. It was a performance issue, right? It wasn't that they didn't want the features. It's that they couldn't afford the features at that scale. So sure, if you're going to use DynamoDB, but you're going to use it at a small scale, why not? Transactions, relations, table scans. Let's do it.
For sure. Let's get into a couple exciting GAs here. So Amazon Security Hub is now generally available, which was announced at reInvent, of course, as a preview product. Security Hub is sort of their answer to a basic SIEM. They don't call it a SIEM in any other language. So, but they basically automatically aggregate, normalize, and prioritize findings from Amazon services, including GuardDuty, Inspector, and Amazon Macie, plus 30 different Amazon partners, which are your people like Palo Alto and Trend Micro and CrowdStrike, etc. All findings are now. They added a few new features during the preview period. So now all findings are sent to CloudWatch events. There's improved action abilities for compliance findings to automate them into Jira or into ServiceNow. There's tag-based access control and cost allocation capabilities, and it is supported by CloudFormation. And the product is PCI, HIPAA, ISO, and SOC certified. So overall, a nice GA announcement here for Security Hub. If you've been reserved from using it because of the beta or preview, it's now time to get to work and start using it.
I'm unclear on this. Does this aggregate data across regions, or is this you have to run this per region?
You do have to run it per region, which is one of my complaints with it. But it is, it does have regional view, and it does go across accounts regionally. But you do have to have one for each region.
From a security perspective, I think this is going to be great to be able to have a centralized single pane view of all of the different tools out there, right? So you can look at your remediations and kind of prioritize them at that point. And from a compliance and governance perspective, I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. So I'm excited to see how they improve upon it in the future.
Yeah, lately there has been no pane of glass. It's all been API, it's all been event notifications, and it's all been cool because we could automate it, but
right.
There really was nothing to look at.
Right. That's very accurate.
I want to look at, sometimes you just want to look at something.
Yeah. It can be very frustrating at times when you're having to sift through, so it'll be exciting.
Well, the other general available product was Amazon Control Tower. Control Tower is a service that is intended for organizations with multiple accounts and teams who are looking for the easiest way to set up their new multi-account AWS environment and govern at scale. So this allows you to set up your landing zones, your best practices, guardrails, user identity and federation capability, and enables account provisioning through something as simple as Amazon Service Catalog, as well as Inforces CloudTrail and Amazon Config. So overall, this is a really great feature. If you're brand new to AWS and you would like to go into a multi-account strategy as part of your plan, you should use Control Tower. If you are a customer who already has hundreds of accounts and wants this capability, I'm sorry, you are out of luck.
Presumably they'll launch some kind of migration tool in the future.
Yeah, we were talking about this over dinner last night, actually. It would be nice if they would maybe have the ability for you to turn it on for net new accounts in an organization. So that way you kind of start moving to the patterns and start using these things for new accounts. But then, yeah, over time, if there was a migration approach, you can move old accounts into this model. That'd be great. But right now, there doesn't really seem to be a way to do that with the documentation. But I know we're going to follow up with Amazon and see if we can get some more information on this one in particular, because I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that every company needs to build and own and run, but how they're going to get there for existing customers is the big question.
Yeah, building landing zones was a huge, basically business for consulting companies, for AWS ProServe, and you can just tell, I'm certain, they took their knowledge and experience from doing that, and now just building a product around it makes so much sense. Getting to where really the org is the account, and the accounts are the blast radiuses.
I don't really have a lot to add on it either. I think it's great. I think it's a great tool, at least for management, right, for the new customers, and hopefully they will, put out some sort of migration tool for existing. But from an SSO, federated access, I think it'll be good.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Well, Jonathan, how do you feel about taking a marketplace and integrating it into your procurement system? Is that something you would like to do?
If only I could integrate it with my procurement system.
Well, but is your
procurement
customers system Coupa?
It is not. It is not.
Does your procurement system support CXML?
No, I'm afraid it doesn't. Is that the open standard for procurement data exchange?
Yes, it is. Apparently written by Coupa.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So I have no idea what market share. I know they're popular.
Yes.
Yeah, I know they're popular, but I don't know what market share they have, or how much they got paid by, or how much they paid Amazon to be the launch partner for this. But yeah,
I mean, it's a great feature. I was super excited when they mentioned it on stage. I was like, oh, this is really nice, to be able to tie it into our procurement system and be able to automatically create POs or approval workflows based on, business logic. That was really great. And then, they're like, well, this is a launch part of Coupa. And I was like, oh, well, we don't use Coupa. I'm sure that's a great product. And then, they mentioned the XML format, which I'd never heard of. And then you look that up too, and you're like, oh, well, Coupa wrote it. That's great. So who supports that protocol? And even though it's supposed to be industry standard, no one else supports it. So I'm not sure exactly what they were thinking on this one.
So I guess they're pioneers in their field for sure. But it'd be nice when this expands to other procurement systems. I assume other systems will implement the open standard, or maybe not. Maybe they'll deploy their own standards.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this was their desire to make Coupa happy and to get a good relationship with them on this. And the reality is that SAP or Workday or NetSuite, Oracle have some other standard that they also support, and those will have to be added now. And then supporting multiple protocols.
Yeah, and anything really that makes it easier to subscribe to the marketplace items is very welcome, though, because we've had outages where we've deployed a new account. The automation that's been tried and tested in other accounts simply doesn't run. And why doesn't it run? It's because somebody has to manually log into the console and subscribe to a particular channel, whether it's CentOS or something else, or you've got to approve the private pricing deal manually. And so anything that can be done like this, that's fantastic.
Well, and the problem with the private pricing for like us is that we have a payer account that no one logs into except for a couple people that we have, and then finance has some access to that to look at the bill, but no one really has access to go into that account. So every time we have to go approve a private marketplace deal, it's like, oh, I have to go find the root key certificate we have for the the two-factor MFA on it. I have to log into this thing I don't ever log into, and it's always a pain. So it'd be nice if it was just kind of integrated into procurement. So, well, now the most important announcement of the event, which gave Peter the win. The Amazon VPC Traffic Mirroring for EC2 instances feature. This allows customers to now replicate network traffic from an EC2 instance within their Amazon VPC and forward that traffic to security and monitoring appliances or for use cases such as content inspection, threat monitoring, and troubleshooting. This appliances can be installed on either a single EC2 instance to receive the traffic, or you can have a fleet of instances behind an NLP with a UDP listener, which ding dang is why you now have NLP with UDP support. Amazon VPC Traffic Mirroring also supports filtering and packet truncation, which allows customers to extract only the data they really care about versus the entire packet payload. So overall, this is super nice. It is attached to ENIs, and it must be handled through an ENI level thing, and it is not in user space, so none of the packets can be modified by a user on a host. So this is pretty good security right here for this particular feature.
I think this is by far the most exciting news. I think and one of the things that they had said too is that it integrates with a lot of their partners, which is fantastic as well. So they did a huge beta test with a ton of vendors, with their partners, with their AWS partners. And on their website, you can actually see, you can get some comments and feedback from some of those partners that kind of went through the beta test, which is neat.
That's great.
That's cool. But we're waiting for this kind of feature for such a long time. It's still quite limited. I think configuring it per ENI, per source ENI, is a bit of a chore. I look forward to the time when we can specify whole subnets or even whole VPCs to gather data from. I mean, are there any production ready appliances ready to receive this data and start reporting on it kind of out the door though? I mean, I know AlertLogic were partners for Reinforce. Does their product support it?
Yeah, I believe AlertLogic does. I believe AlertLogic, there were quite a few of them that do. What are some of the other ones? Extra Hop, Palo Alto is another one. I would like to note too, though, that one of the downsides is that you can only have 3 active sessions on each ENI. So there's something to consider about that as well. And bandwidth.
I mean, there's definitely some nice use cases though, even from just, you can pump this data into something like Wireshark, right? So if you had a system where, you need to get network packet captures off a host, instead of going and, running Wireshark locally, you just enable this for that host for the period you want to do the capturing and then just look at the data offline. So this is nice too if you have like a zero access to production type environment. You can set up your rules and access to allow them to create, a very quick Wireshark host or some type of streaming function to stream this data into S3, and then they can pick it up as necessary to do their troubleshooting without having to have that local box access, which would be nice.
It has uses outside of security too. I mean, troubleshooting in general, being able to capture traffic to do troubleshooting of APIs or whatever you have going on in the VPC is going to be fantastic. So I'm sure there'll be some tooling around debugging problems and supportability using a tool like this too, instead of deploying Wireshark on your EC2 instances.
It's early days. I mean, they've been working on this for a while for those of us in the know. So I'm glad to see it finally get shipped. But when it was first pitched, I think there was an idea that it had more capability than it's shipped with, which is MVP. I expect you'll see more coming out in the next 6 months to a year that'll start making this even more powerful and more capable for what we want to be able to do. But this is a good first step because, in a lot of cases, there's very simple use cases like the troubleshooting one you just mentioned, or if you have an outbound NAT firewall type solution that you want to be able to packet capture data through, or even like the transit gateway. If I can attach it to a transit gateway, that'd be super helpful. I don't necessarily need to have every host, but at least the key ones that have traffic handling through them would be super helpful.
Yeah, it was interesting to see that you can actually route this traffic through a transit gateway system to a VPC somewhere else, and have that mirrored data pop out anyplace else. So you could have your InfoSec VPC somewhere receiving all this data.
Yeah,
I'm worried that it's going to open a bit of a can of worms around wanting more all the time. I mean, security people never say they want less; they always want more. And so I think what's going to happen now is they're going to realize that we encrypt everything in transit, and now they want to decrypt all this data. And where do we get the keys from? Well, the keys come from ACM, except right now they're managed wholly by Amazon. They're locked up, and we have no access to them. So in order to decrypt any of this traffic, we're going to have access to private ACM keys. So,
well,
I'm sure Amazon
they need to solve this problem for EC2 hosts too, right? Because now with if you had a certificate that wasn't on the host, right, you couldn't look at that data either. So, the private certificates kind of gets you that direction already, where now you have certificates that are being managed by ACM that I need to be able to access decrypt data on a host that's coming in that way. So the more they get into that host-based encryption piece with S2N, I think the more interesting this will start to get and how they start doing that type of analysis. I think it's definitely get this feature out there, identify that as a use case they need next, and then start working on developing that out. I'm
excited to see the feature. I think we knew it was going to come. I'm disappointed they hadn't built more tooling around it in time for the Reinforce conference, though. Like the SageMaker type tooling, the machine learning type tooling and reporting that we talked about.
Yeah, I was a little bummed they didn't have a SageMaker thing set up for this. Like here's a quick start on how to use SageMaker to actually go analyze this data. That would have been really nice to see. But those are things that come out of the solutions architects here in the next few weeks or months, and they'll be blogging about it. So definitely, if this is something you're interested in, stay tuned, because I'm sure more and more data will come, and we'll keep an eye on it here at the Cloud Pod, so we can let you know about it. As I know it's a big deal for a lot of companies. For partners who are wanting to get the security proficiency, there's a new prescriptive journey from Amazon. So they'll prescribe to you as a partner how to get to security, but they will not subscribe to you or prescribe to you as a customer how to get there. But nice for partners.
Sorry. Well, we had to do it all on our own, so this is great for other partners to have an easier time than we had.
Yeah, that is not an easy track. It's really, really hard. Yeah.
Yes, it's security is definitely something they take very serious at AWS, and they have a very high bar. So the prescriptive journey, I think, is maybe a bit more necessary for some of the APNs who are struggling with how to get there. And we're probably asking Amazon, like, well, what do you want us to do in this? How do we build this? And that's nice that they've helped give you some answers. Amazon Direct Connect has launched its first location in Italy, just in time for my trip there in next week. So you can now use Direct Connect to connect to CD LAN in Milano, Italy. And this is the new first direct connection in Italy. And then our final story for Reinforce, Amazon CloudWatch adds visibility for your .NET and SQL application health. So this is new capability to provide observability of your application stack. It sets up and analyzes important monitors from across your application resource to discover problems with the app and creates a CloudWatch automatic dashboard. So this is all out-of-the-box tuning and capabilities for monitoring for .NET and SQL Server. And then they utilize Amazon SageMaker machine learning to determine what things look abnormal or errors with those resources. So this is interesting because you see kind of a few different avenues where Amazon is moving very slowly into application performance management products for APM. And this is one of the areas coupled with X-Ray where you're starting to see them kind of co-merge into something that might be really interesting in the future. So this was also announced yesterday here at the conference.
Yeah, I'm really glad I'm not doing an APM startup right now.
Oh, I would not be a good time to do it.
Yeah.
Between Stackdriver on the Google side and what Microsoft is doing with Azure and now AWS, I think that's an area that's going to be ripe for disruption here in the future.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up most of the Reinforce stuff. Anything we didn't talk about, you guys, that you wanted to mention about Reinforce?
The talk that you haven't seen on YouTube yet from Colm about encryption of all the network traffic between Nitro hosts, which was enabled on the back end, totally transparently to customers, is amazing. That definitely deserves a mention.
Yeah, anytime Colm talks, I'm always wowed and amazed, and he is a very smart person. So yeah, that's the very first YouTube video that I plan to be watching. So as I was not able to make it to his talk, I was double booked at the time, but definitely excited to see what they're talking about.
Yeah, he's really definitely got my interest with some of his Twitter storms about the way they handle key exchanges and things, and the fact that they enabled it all transparently is awesome. Scary, but awesome.
There was one session that I was really disappointed to not be able to get into, and I'm trying to pull it up now. I can't remember exactly what the title was for all of you that might want to watch it, but it was basically talking about the firewall and WAF and how it was going to be, or how it could be used to detect bots and to detect bots, essentially. So I was really bummed. That was one that I really, really wanted to get into, but the classes were full, so I'm hoping they'll post that one soon, as it was just done this afternoon.
Yeah, probably the next, and they're pretty quick. Within 24 to 48 hours, they'll all be up on the internet, which also diminishes the value of paying $1,200 to come to the conference. Well, overall, I think, I definitely think my takeaway is that I don't think I'll come back next year. I think I'll pass on Houston and, listen to the Twitterverse and see if it got better from this year to next year, and then maybe come back in 2 years when it's a little bit more developed of a conference. But yeah, I'm glad I came for the first one. I'm glad to see it. I can say I was there. Like Peter can say he was at the first reInvent.
Exactly. So. Did anyone see Corey Quinn's session?
No, I will watch the video on that one as well, but I did hear it was quite entertaining and was very good.
There you go.
But Corey is always a great speaker and fun to watch, so I'm sure his session was perfect. But he told me he only had about 5 minutes in that session where he was actually going to be talking, so I didn't prioritize going to it over something else that I need to do.
Right.
So do you think they'll pull the security content completely out of reInvent, or obviously not completely out of reInvent, but mostly out of reInvent?
Yeah, that's the question.
So I think if they went that direction, this conference would maybe make more sense. Especially the level of the content they had here and stuff like that. And this is the place you come for security. But I think they would diminish their message at reInvent to not have security there. And so I feel like they will continue to probably have security at both places, but they may start deferring more features for security to this conference to make this more interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, really. It's hard to say you're a security first organization and then not talk about security in the biggest conference and charge you an extra $1,200 to go and.
Well, I mean, this is also the big question, though, too, they had to solve. Is like, how do you scale reInvent beyond 50,000 people and have it be effective, right? And the venues that they've been doing in Las Vegas, across the entire Strip, and the bus system and all that, it's making it difficult to get the value out of it. And so if they were very clear about, this is a security conference, and we're going to have a machine learning AI conference, and we're going to have a DevOps conference, and they're going to be highly focused, and there's going to be segmented out, maybe it gets more interesting, and maybe then, because that's the way you just understand that's how it works. But then it also means that companies are doing a lot more travel to go get the training they were all getting at reInvent. So I think it's a tough situation for them to figure out how to solve it. But I'm sure there's people smarter than us who are working on this very actively right now, trying to figure out how to scale reInvent.
Yeah, first thing they need is a bigger facility.
Well, I mean, my big complaint is I wish they would keep the Sands, because the Sands is a good conference, but I wish they would pick up the Las Vegas Convention Center and then just run buses between the two constantly. And then I think between those two facilities, which really run the core of Convex, the big, whatever the big electronic conferences with all the TVs, that's the way to go. And then you don't have to have people going up and down the Strip to MGM and to Mandalay Bay and all of that. Just stick down that end of the Strip, go between those two convention centers, and I think they would have a pretty good setup. But I've put it in my comments 2 years in a row, and it hasn't changed. So, the size of that conference, it's a massive contract that it's probably 3 to 5 year commitments that they have to sign, and it has to be structured in the right way. So, there's unions involved and hotel casino empires to please. So,
the house always wins.
Well, it's fantastic to have you guys here. It's good to see you here in Boston, of course, Peter, and then Sarah as well. Thanks for joining us, Sarah. Where would they find more from you on the internet?
So I don't have a ton of information out there, but I do post a blog on on the Foghorn blog website, so you can catch me there. We recently did one on Ansible and the CIS benchmarks, so I'm going to keep that going, I think, and we'll start building off of that a bit. I think another one we may talk about is fail to ban and how to automate that as well. So that's probably the primary. I am on LinkedIn as well.
Thanks, Sarah. And Peter and Jonathan, I'll see you back in the East Bay.
See you soon.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We would like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting and Turbonomic. Subscribe on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions.